Hello, good evening, and thanks again for another edition of Ideas Exchange. We'll come your way every Wednesday. Last week, I think the focus was on some activity at the University of Professional Studies here in Accra, where the former president was speaking to one important issue that has been with us for years, which should be part of our discourse as we look at the way of improving our governance system, i.e. democracy and elections. That's about funding political parties. But 2 weeks ago, I had an interesting conversation here with a policy analyst. Apparently, he is a governance and public policy analyst, Akwesi Opong Fosu. The conversation was on the consequences of what we termed transactional politics on governance and our democratic dispensation. As we speak, NDC is heavily bruised. Its members of parliament are hot. Many are trying to exonerate themselves, while others have been already tagged, suspected. Some lists are out. I've seen some of the lists, and many are doing their best to make the public believe that they are not part of the blackmailers or the backstabbers. But I can tell you that what happened in Parliament last Friday has angered many Ghanaians, not NDC alone. As a friend of the presumptive flag bearer of the NDC, I can tell you for a fact that he's very, very, very disappointed. Knowing him as somebody who is very forgiving, I can appreciate why his demeanor looks like so. But the fact is, what some NDC MPs did last Friday has made NDC's roadmap to a comfortable victory in 2024 dented, because a lot of work would have to go in to appease people we call floating voters. Many Ghanaians who are banking their hopes in the leadership of the NDC may be taking a second look at the NDC in a position today. And of course, just about 38 of them are people many are suggesting have taken huge fat envelopes or may be doing this to punish the party. And it is in what Professor Joshua Alabi has put out, which for me is loaded with wisdom, and the choice of words are things that should prick the minds of NDC MPs, particularly those who know the backstabbers and do not want to bring their names out. But I know that some of them have started dropping names of people they know very well. Some are young MPs, some are experienced MPs. And this is what Professor Joshua Alabi wrote, which is full of wisdom and which has informed the reason why we are looking at the topic for tonight's program. I'll share that with you shortly, but let me read with you what Professor Joshua Alabi wrote. And he says, I don't know who they have decided to hurt. Is it the grassroots who worked for them to be in parliament, or the party on whose ticket they are in parliament? And we are referring to some of the MPs who have perhaps decided that they are themselves and they can do what they want. Or is it the leadership of the party because they may have problems with one or two, and it is emerging from some leading members of the party in parliament that they did this deliberately to prove a point that they are not happy? Again, is it because they did this to the entire nation, which is suffering from this over-bloated government? Possibly some cash for primaries? Or is it in full support of Akufado's large-size government, or to undermine our fight to come back to parliament? Our reference, the NDC as a party, in the words of Professor Joshua Alabi. And he says, whatever it is, it's a big disappointment to the good people of this country. And that's how Professor Joshua Alabi ended his Facebook post after the disappointing verdict when the MPs went into secret ballot. But It's a sad development for many, and the conversation since Saturday suggests that a lot of Ghanaians are disappointed, because I personally have followed political party campaigns since 1992. In 2020, I was privileged to visit every constituency in this country, and to be specific, every constituency where NDC has an interest, because I was following the former president, John Dramani Mahama, who was the candidate of the NDC for the 2020 elections. And I can say on authority that many people in parliament today are there because they rode on the back of the popular liking for John Dramani Mahama. In fact, in some of the constituencies, we noticed as we went round that people said, but for John Mahama, they were not going to consider that much voting for the MPs. And if you check the trend of electoral results since 2016, you would notice that he even did better than many of the MPs in their constituencies as far as presidential and parliamentary results, looking at the figures, are concerned. And so what the MPs have done, which has angered the grassroots of the party, is not really about punishing one or two leaders of the NDC today because they are bitter about changes in parliament, or they may have gone for money, I will call bribe, because they want to go for primaries, or some of them have planned not to go for elections again, and so this is the time to cash in on a government that is ready to pour money on the table to get its wish. But what they have done is a stab on the back of the former president and the leadership of the party, who they will go back to smile, to look for their votes in the primaries. But this painful stab cannot be left there alone, because it is something that will be of interest to the NDC and Ghanaians in general, because what they have done has disappointed many people, particularly civil society organizations, technocrats, people who have lots of experience in the financial sector of this economy, people even in MPP who are all adding to the clarion call on the president: cut down expenditure, save some money, and let us see how we can quickly come back and put the economy in shape. And so if you are among those who deliberately took money, or did so because you have factions and you want your loyalty to be to somebody rather than the interest of the party, which is making you who we are calling honorable today, what you have basically done is to make the work even more difficult should John Mahama win the 2024 elections, because he would have to spend a lot of time to work to bring the economy on track. But your action today is adding to the wage bill or the debt, because the size of government remains the same. And what is even more interesting, that after the NDC rebel MPs have done what they did by endorsing the bloated government size, government has turned around speaking to them again. And I heard the Minister for Information saying, we need members of parliament to pass the revenue bills, because without it, we cannot get the IMF bailout. Does it make sense to you? And that is what Franklin Kujo summarized, which I tried to speak to. And it is very simple. He says, the NDC party leadership in parliament and out of parliament lost the vote. Will they ever be united and deliver on the many vexed issues Ghanaians want? Or the NPP just outsmarted them again? And he says, 2024 is slipping away. That is the weight of what the NDC has done. Tonight, I have two guests, and they'll be joining me shortly to have a conversation on this. But before that, I'd also want to tell you that tonight's program is going to be very interactive, because I want to engage you at this stage. If people are concluding that they have lost confidence in government because the president is just simply stubborn, and irrespective of the clarion call, and I'm using this word again, the appeals from all walks of life on him to take a second look at how he's governing this country to at least make some savings. And he wouldn't do it. And NDC MPs are the last hope people think will stop government, and they are not doing it. Can you imagine how people will be so much expectant going forward into few things that are still outstanding? I'll be introducing my guests soon, and they'll be joining me by phone. One is Professor Bafo Ajimandua, who is the co-founder of CDD Ghana, the chief executive of the J.A. Kufuor Foundation. He'll be joining us later on this program. But Jonathan Asante Otri is a political analyst and a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. He'll be my first guest who will be joining me on phone to have a conversation. How can the NDC redeem the sunken image? And I'm making reference to members of parliament. Don't forget, LGBTQI+ is waiting. The 3 revenue bills that Federation of Labour, Association of Ghana Industries, the Beverage Producers Association of Ghana are already crying because things have become difficult, will be on the table. And the CI on the new voters register, the new CI that is going to be used or proposed by the EC for the compilation or adding on to the voters register for the 2024 elections, are still crucial. Are you confident when you hear NDC MP say, we'll block it, we'll do this because they have started again? Is that giving you that confidence that it will happen? Well, Jonathan Asante Otri is with me. Jonathan, first of all, thanks for the privilege and good evening.
Good evening, Eric.
How's Cape Coast? In Accra, it's blowing hot and cold. The Vice President of the US was with you. How did it light the spirits of the people who were anxious to watch her in Cape Coast, if you were one of those who joined them at the castle?
Well, I wasn't there. I was at the venture, so, but of course, because of much traffic, the presence was felt. And of course, the comment on what, was done against our ancestors, when the comment is welcoming. And it shows that the West or the Atlantic slip, things that happened to our ancestors ought to have happened. And we still have to probably clamor for more. We can leverage on this to ask for some kind of reparation. But of course, others will say that, what are you asking that for? They've been giving us this, they've been giving us that. What have we seen out of these things? But of course, you can never say never. Obama, when Obama came, that one I was there, I saw him, he came around. So the Vice President too has also come around. I think it is good for the image of our democracy, for Zoom especially. And the nation, I remember in Mr. Rawlins's era, we used to do the Pan-Africanism or something like that, the celebration of Pan-Africanism. I have forgotten another one that we do. So it was like with the Bafetu Afashe, and we had another particular celebration which was, geared towards driving tourists here, as it were. And I think that if tourism alone were to use tourism alone, especially in for that matter, I think Cape Coast will be able to get developed like, the way Egypt, has been because of its age past.
Turn our attention to our topic for today. We've seen the verdict. Ghanaians are angry. Many people are disappointed. The floating voters, the middle upper class, academicians, people who represent think tanks, saw the NDC's MPs as the last hope to to bring the president to order. 5 days after the shameful verdict, and having listened to attempts by some members of the NDC to redeem their image, to exonerate themselves, reactions by the leadership of the party, when you reflect and go back to Friday and then fast forward to today as we speak, what is walking through your mind?
Well, I think that it's quite unfortunate that as a nation we've gotten to where we've gotten to because of unbridled, expenditure of our government. And so haven't had a hung parliament. Many are those who have had, that belief that gone are the days when, a government would just send a bill unscrutinized by the majority, and then they'll just do, it has been passed. But I think that so far it has not been bad. The minority has been quite forthright. Over the period, they've been quite forthright, even before it became a hung parliament. So now that they've become a hung parliament, I wouldn't say they've done badly. But of course, human beings are motivated by one thing or the other. And shamefully so, people just thought of their parochial interest and then did the nation, not the NDC part, they did the nation in. Because if you look at the situation, the Catholic Bishop Conference, they've spoken about government reducing its expenditure, reducing the number of ministers, and so on and so forth. The Ghana Pentecostal Association, they've spoken about it. What is it called? The NDC as a minority, and the bigwigs in this country, individual stakeholders, important personalities, they've all spoken about this. So it is
Ghana also spoke to it.
Now. Yeah, it is beyond the NDC now. So it has become something of national interest. So if you have some few NDC MPs going to do that unthinkable thing, I think that they have buried their heads in the sand. And of course, people will be watching them closely because you dare not do or say anything that will let people know that you are part of the 30 or you are part of the 20. So I think that it is not lost. The plot is not lost at all. It is just an error that can easily be corrected because, Eric, believe me, you still need these people as long as they are part of the 8th Parliament. All you need to do is to conscientize them and let them know, as we are all doing in the media, to let them know that the issues that are even ahead of us are more crucial. They are more crucial because, one, when you talk of these revenue bills that are coming, it could lead to, you even said that in the introduction. The AGI, they have spoken about that. Ghana Importers Association, they've spoken about that. The trade, whatever, that Dr. Obi also, they've spoken about that. And so it is equally gaining a nationalistic color. So I'm very much sure, and I still have the firm belief that they will do the right thing.
Okay. So Jonathan, I come in here because they will do the right thing for many is still something that hangs because integrity is built over a period of time. As far back as 2017, the minority in parliament have been very critical of some of the things government does. But the minority is on record over the last 3-4 years of issuing threats on the floor of parliament, press conferences, saying all kinds of things. And at the very last minute, they disappoint Ghanaians. From e-levy to the passage of the 2.5% additional VAT to the confirmation of the finance minister, who many people blamed for the woes of the country today. The confirmation of the ministers of Interior, Defense, and the fact that the Techiman South violence was a blot on their personalities because they were in charge, incidents that happened on the floor of parliament, and you can count as many as possible. They blow hot and cold, and this is the icing And that is why a lot of people are angry and are saying that it is not reflecting an angry opposition that wants to buy into the trust of the average Ghanaian to get their nod, and for this reason give John Mahama the opportunity to come back and govern this country. That is the serious issue, and not just about it has happened and let it go.
Well, Eric, I think that we are a bit too hard on the MPs. Yes, they goofed by, But if you look at it from a different angle, this is a government that is driving us into the wolves, into the abyss. Okay, we don't want them to increase expenditure. That was one of the three items Dr. Atiforson itemized when he was given the mandate to become the minority leader. So they are watching government, they have to do that. So you have some miscreants within the fold of the NBC, for whatever reason, decided to go against that. But these are the same set of MPs that fought so hard to give Mr. Babin to make him the speaker. This e-levy, if we are talking about the issues, individually, I think that the e-levy, they were from the onset against that. Don't also forget that the Supreme Court itself has not also been trustworthy. I hope I'm choosing my diction correctly. They've not been trustworthy. I think that they've been on the side of government, as it were, to create some kind of wedge in the heels of the minority in the way they intend to check government and government business. This issue of budget, don't forget, the minority disapproved the budget of government. Then they found a way of saying quorum. The same Supreme Court ruled that they didn't have a quorum. Now, the same e-levy thing comes, and the minority says the majority don't have a quorum, and therefore the e-levy cannot pass. They took the matter to the Supreme Court. Up till now, that issue has not been ruled upon. Justice Abdullahi took that issue of quorum, and it was within the speed of light decided upon. So I think that we are a little too harsh on the minority. That is the few minority who did the minority in, and then the nation as a whole.
It's an interesting point. It's an interesting point you are raising, because today the minority, through Roxanne Dafamapo, who was in court, expressed total disappointment that review to the ruling by the court, i.e. James Jechikwesion's case, when they went, there was virtually no session, and the case has been adjourned to April 5 or thereabout. And they think that if that case had been dealt with expeditiously, they perhaps would have had their member of parliament in the House as we speak. So I understand the concern about the involvement subtly of our courts to frustrate the processes at the court. But as we speak, lots of names have come up. I have seen some names of MPs from the coastal belt here in Accra. I've seen some names of senior members of parliament. I've heard speculations of people who even have been claimed not to be part of the backstabbing MPs that others are saying are part of it. The NDC is going fishing. Should you pursue this agenda? How best can this work in the interest of a party that wants Ghanaians to believe that it is a better alternative?
Well, yes, it's a good question. I think they should go fishing. The investigation should be done, but they should not be made public. They should not make scapegoats out of any of these MPs. I think that, as I said earlier on, listening to Ghanaians and making this issue much more nationalistic in color, I think they will now know. Since you are part of that, of those personalities that took that decision of voting for Thurday's nominees, I think going forward you will have to have everything. They will have to do the fishing, investigate, and then can put it, as part of just among some caucus who may know that if they want to punish them, they can punish them at the primaries. Without coming out to muddy the waters. I think it will be unwholesome for the NDC if they come out pinpointing, and I'm very much proud of Mr. Mahama for saying that list circulating is not true. It is a speculative list, and they should ignore that. That is a mark of a good leader. So the investigation will be done, but it should be treated in-house and not for public consumption. So just at the top level, the national level, maybe the general secretary, the chairman, and probably whoever becomes the flag bearer. Some Mama is coming, then he becomes the flag bearer. So just a handful of people should know. Then it could trickle down. If you really think that these people have not in any way lived up to expectation, the electorate, the delegate will decide whether they should reinstate such people when they contest for their primaries.
Okay, so for those who have just joined us, this conversation is looking at the NDC, what happened in Parliament, the disappointment, the anger across the country, especially not within NDC members, but many people were looking up to the minority to at least send a certain strong signal. I received messages and somebody was saying, look, if you look at what is happening elsewhere and you want to look at the posturing of our political elite and a few who may want to satisfy their interest or selfish interest, it will leave us where we are. I want you to know that I'm speaking to Jonathan Asante Ochre. He's a political analyst and a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. I will be joined on the line by Mr. Abraham Kumsin, who is the General Secretary of the Federation of Labour, because he's much interested, because I know the AGI, the Federation of Labour, petitioned the Speaker of Parliament, the leadership of both sides of the House, specifically to the revenue bills, the 20% excise duty, which they think that will bring untold hardship on industry, result in layoffs. In fact, purchasing power of people will even be weakened because the cost of commodities will be higher, because lending is now a notch higher, because Bank of Ghana has increased it by 150 basis points to 29.5%. So if this is added on, it will be a burden. I want to find out from him when he joins us later on this program, maybe in 10 minutes time or 5 minutes time. I want to find, does he have confidence that Parliament will reject these bills, considering what happened and what his prayer is? But let me ask you, Mr. Jonathan Asante, in France, the President Macron has been pushed to the wall because the pension reforms triggered series of protests and government had to bow to the wish of the people. If you go to Israel, government was pursuing judicial reforms, and there have been series of demonstrations. Even when Netanyahu insisted that he was going ahead, today I'm told that there's a beat back to what they wanted to do. In Ghana, Martin Pegbu called for a demonstration to send a strong signal to government, and just a handful of people poured on the streets, and I remember some government apparatchiks were making mockery of him. Does these actions, like what we saw by some rebel or backstabbing MPs did, and even to other members on the other side, majority MPs, who, regardless of the cry of Ghanaians, are following stomach direction, being the reason why it appears the public are no more interested in party politics, activism, protest, using the average person's protest to push government to act on their wishes? Is this, or could this be the reason why we are here today?
Well, yeah, it is true. I think that the main opposition party has been slow when it comes to demonstration. I think all because they don't have a flag bearer now, will be galvanizing, the grassroots, as it were, to do demonstration. For example, the appointment of Dr. Apiahini to the EC, I think that civil society, the NDC as the main opposition party, individual Ghanaians who are level-headed, mild-mannered Ghanaians should see that as a potential threat for our democracy and as it were, for elections in the future. You see, that is something that should ginger the grassroots to engage, to, as it were, deal with government in terms of, engaging in democracy, which is a civil, right, to engage in some kind of demonstration, because if you invest so much in elections and the process, is not clean and fair, then all your effort will just come to vain. And so an issue such as this, that the president plainly and plainly, when someone who is so known as an MPP activist to a place where an institution that is supposed to be a referee for the maintenance of our democracy, maybe I am expecting things of that nature to come up in some few months to come. The NDC has taken or elected their flag bearer. I think that when the leader coming into force, we will see a lot of activism along the line. But at the moment, you could see that things of that nature have really died down. Okay, so Mr. Jonathan Asante-Okyere, stay with me on the line, because we've been joined by Mr. Abraham Comson. In fact, let me make this clear. Professor Bafo Adjumandua, we are told, has an emergency and he has to engage some very important visitors and cannot join us on this program. So as a substitute, we have Mr. Abraham Comson, who is very interested in proceedings in Parliament between now and Friday as they prepare to rise for the Easter break, because these three revenue bills includes the 20% excise tax, which Labour is totally against. Stay on the line. Mr. Abraham Comson will join us, and then together we'll continue this conversation. While you are waiting, Mr. Jonathan Asante, I want you to reflect on two critical things that Mr. Comson will also try to address before we come back to you. These are: one, in the US, when MPs or congressmen vote, eventually how they voted, the vote patterns are made public to the electorate because they are representatives of the people. In UK, recently, before the Prime Minister was kicked out, and you know that many of his own MPs or the MPs made their positions clear, and that was a good signal that demonstrates or reflects good governance and better or improved democracy. In our part of the world, they call it secret vote. Does it make sense to continue this secret vote process when our MPs are supposed to represent us and they go to satisfy their personal or party interest? Think about it. I'll come back to you. Mr. Comson, good evening and thanks for your time.
Good evening, Eric.
I was thinking, as an old pensioner, you should be sleeping by now.
I don't sleep.
You don't sleep. Of course, I know anytime Parliament sits, you almost have heartbreaks because you are not too sure about how they go about the revenue bills. What happened last Friday has disappointed many. What can, or first of all, what are your expectations?
Oh, I think, you see, the party too has the work to do. See, some of them may be in Parliament, but they may not even understand the ideology that their party represents. You see, so I think that there should be orientation for these MPs so that they know what they represent.
The orientation is always done, even at the parliamentary level.
No, the ideology. You see, they must know what, ideology that they are representing, not just workshop or something. But they must be taught to understand why they are there and why they even belong to. And I think MPP too, I don't know what they have been doing. So, and they too, as I said today, they claim to be, what, capitalist, whatever. But what they are doing is not capitalism at all. You see, they have. So it appears out there in Parliament there, maybe for some parochial or personal interest. They are not representing anything.
Okay, so that's your opening remark. But Mr. Comson, first of all, I know that Labour, like the other groups who are openly sending signals to Parliament that, look, Yes, you've disappointed us first, and I'm looking at Parliament as a whole because the vote was done by both NDC and MPP MPs who did something that didn't satisfy Ghanaians, but the focus has been on NDC MPs because many people thought that that would be their last bet. Now, as they prepare for a debate or a vote on the 3 revenue bills, crucial to government, the Bank of Ghana has made a passionate appeal to Parliament that it is necessary for the IMF loan. I've heard the Minister for Information say same just today. And of course, the MPs are also supposed to be there to work in the interest of the public. What is your fear or expectation?
No, you see, as I said, you know, some of them are there for their parochial issues. Look at what some few of them have been doing. Honorable Ablakwa, for instance, look at the risks that he has taken, and it is using results. This National
Cathedral project.
Yes, look at what he did, and it is risky for him to do what he did, but he understands where he belongs. You see, look at, you know, even yesterday, the president has now use our state aircraft to travel. But he wasn't using it. You see, the president caused a lot of, you know, financial loss to the state. But by courtesy of Honorable Ablakwa, I think
he's saving a lot of money for the state by...
Exactly.
Okay, I think it's a very strong point, which I think personally I'll join you to commend Okudzeto for that bold initiative. But go ahead, sir.
So, you see, so I'm saying that's why people there in Parliament, that's why I said, some of them are there just, I mean, for their own parochial interest.
Okay.
So they should be, but no, let me ask something. What is the function of the whip? The whip of the party, the MP that is called a whip. I mean, he has a duty to make sure that his people fall in line. You see, before anything...
I know Mr. Jonathan Asante will be interested in helping us to address the whip system. But at least we know they were whipped. The party joined in the whipping. 136 MPs were on the floor. And of course, we knew 136, 136. And they went to do secret balloting. At that stage, the whip was missing and therefore couldn't have been pushing them to do what the party wanted or perhaps Ghanaians want.
Yeah, but you see, the NDC leadership should not leave this, what has happened. They shouldn't just, you know, sweep it under the carpet. No. They should find out. They should find out and know what happened, what went wrong. Is it because of the change of leadership, or I don't know. Maybe, but if this happens, if this thing happens,
what we know, and from those who are confessing or gossiping or giving hints about those who are involved, is that it is a combination of factors. Some got money. That is a fact. Some members of parliament have said this. And therefore, I can authoritatively quote what they have said, that some of their colleagues took money, bribe, to do what they did. Others did so because they wanted to send a strong signal that they are not happy with the recent reshuffle in Parliament.
Look at that. But it's even charged. Then you must resign. Then you must break camp and go as an independent whatever. Because if you still remain there, I mean, very dangerous. You see, and you can be sanctioned.
Mr. Kumse, so stay on the line. I'll come back to you again because I'm doing this with you and Mr. Jonathan Asante for the next 15, 20 minutes, and then we open the phone lines for others to come. Mr. Asante, Mr. Kumsen makes reference to the whip system. And again, we also know that there are 3 very important agenda on the table. The LGBTQI plus whatever. We also have the revenue bills. We have the CI on the proposition in the new CI on how people's names can be captured on the EC's voters register. Will these be litmus tests to NDC MPs? Because now we know one is dead. And so they are now 136, including the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, the second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, who says he wants to be on the side of the majority. So now 136, 136. If the speaker sits in parliament, that's how it's going to be. If the first deputy speaker of parliament is in the seat, it will be otherwise. If there's no by-election, would you see this as a litmus test for the NDC to redeem the image, i.e., the minority in parliament through the activity of the backstabbers?
Well, let me just seek some clarification. What is the number of MPs in parliament? Is it 270?
It is 275. And we know that James Jechi Kwesen, through the Supreme Court's own form of gerrymandering, that's how I would want to describe it, that MP is sitting at home because there were similar cases where people referred to them why those cases, the MPs involved were not asked to sit at home. So Jechi Kwesen is out, and so you have 274, which would have been 137 each. And then you have the NDC being shot down by one, making it 136, and then we now have one MPP MP dead, which also reduces their number by one. So Jechi Kwesen out, who is living but for the Supreme Court, and then we have the Kumewu MP who passed, unfortunately, after a short illness just about a day or two ago.
So if I'm even augmenting your argument and the question further, I would say that technically I just supposed to have an offer. So and that means that the NDC may even have, some numerical advantage on their part. But of course, I think that the issues on the bench are quite different. You see, with the issue that there was this backstabbing, I can say, for example, that they might have done some other considerations. A government that has been pointed out to it several times by mild-mannered people in this country that cut down the expenditure. So if you have brought in, new ministers, nominees, you want them to be, approved. And then they think that, well, it means that the government still wants their people to function. Okay, then let them go and vote for. So it was quite easy for them to have taken that, bribe, or to have been motivated one way or the other to vote for the president's nominees. But if you talk of the CI affects all and sundry, including all individual MPs. Should the CI go through as it stands now, then it doesn't affect only the 90-something who voted for the nominees in the previous issue, but it affects all and sundry, all parliamentarians. So I think that one, they will have a big thing. Secondly, there's the three revenue streams that they want to. You see, looking at it from a different angle, of course, we wouldn't want the nation to go into a halt or collapse economically. But there should be a period within the proposition and the consideration of the bill in which some amendment ought to be made. Either they are able to get government to cut down its expenditure so that they will pass it, so that we get the IMF intervention. That will be the only win-win situation. Other than that, if it just to be restricted budget and no amendments are made, and government is still persistent keeping that high expenditure of their records, then I think we'll be expecting them to do the reasonable thing.
Okay, so state them, Mr. Jonathan Asante, because we are walking into the realm of what is going to whet the appetite of Mr. Abraham Kumsin. Mr. Kumsin, I'm back with you on the same subject. I asked the question earlier. What are your expectations if you were speaking to NDC MPs, NPP MPs, as a trade unionist, somebody who represents industry, who knows very well how they are suffering and why your fear is that a lot more Ghanaians will go home? What would you tell them?
You see, we have made our issues very clear. We've petitioned the Speaker of Parliament, that is our federation, and the AGI has also done that. Guta has also done it. You see, a lot of groups have petitioned Parliament over this very new taxes that they are bringing. And as I mentioned earlier this week, Monday or so, on one of your programs, I listed about 17 taxes that industry is paying, and it is too much. It is too much, and it is has compelled most of the companies to lay off workers because they can't break even. They cannot sell their product because the prices keep going up. Electricity, water. While the domestic client, theirs, was a bit okay, but the industry, theirs got tripled, and they use water frequently for processing their products. And again, electricity, the machines that they use.
So does it mean that you expect that the bill will be thrown out, reviewed, as Mr. Jonathan Asante said, or approved?
Let me learn. You see, the thing is that if the MPs, they know all these challenges, so if they will go ahead to vote in favor of the approval of the taxes, it's up to them. If they are there, they don't know what they are there for. Because the thing is that we are complaining about the size of this government, the expenditure, even look at the Jubilee House or the Press House. Look at the number of staffers, about 3,000. So if you know, as an MP, you know the challenges that we are facing. You know the problem that this government is creating for us, which is affecting. Look, we all know that about 98 MPs belonging to the government side raised issues about Furata, that the man is not competent. He must go. As at now, we don't know what is happening. So this same man that you tell that is not competent, and we all know that he is not competent, then you approve money for him to be applied. As at now, even today in Parliament, they were discussing this fund, local government. He's the man that is care. He's messing up everything.
Okay,
so if you as an MP, you are there and you approve it for them to destroy the economy. Nobody is going to beg them. If they like, they go and collect money and then chop for themselves and then allow the economy to crumble. They cannot say, I had this man, Kujo Gruma. I just look at him. This guy, when you were at George, he interviewed me several. So I'm surprised that he's behaving the way he's behaving. Now you are appealing to us that we should help you to, get who asked you to go to IMF. Meanwhile, the deputy finance minister, the substantive minister himself, they told everybody that there's no way they are going to go to IMF.
Mr. Kumsin, I understand you perfectly. I can imagine your emotions, and you've made it perfectly clear.
They should go and approve.
Okay, so Mr. Kumsin, right, we want to reserve the remaining time for those who are going to join us. Mr. Jonathan Asante, you'll be making your concluding remarks. But Mr. Kumsin, thank you very much for making our day on Ideas Exchange. But stay and listen in your bedroom to those who will be joining us to hear what their views will be. Mr. Asante, before we go, secret ballot may be the conduit that will make MPs do what they want rather than what the people wish. If we want to improve on our governance system, it would mean that we may have to revise some of these things in order to make things more transparent. Would you go for it? How can it be done?
Well, I think our democracy has not grown to a level where we can openly allow people to cast their ballot and show it. Our politicians, those at the helm of affairs, are quite vindictive, and they will not, forgive you. So I think that secret balloting on some important issues will still have to be kept. But of course, most often than not, parliamentary proceedings have always ended with consensus or if all of those who are in favor of the motion say aye, they say aye. Those without any, they say so. That kind of consensus building has been there, but it's only when it comes to issues where the two, do not have any kind of agreement, then they will have to ensure that a secret balloting is conducted. If that had not been the case, I don't think that the NDC would have had Mr. Babin as the speaker. And so it's just a matter of convincing, strongly the members of parliament to see the need to do this and not to do that. But of course, the ship system must work, and you must be monitoring, these MPs so that nobody goes wayward.
Okay, so in a minute, it may be a difficult question to answer in a minute. Yesterday, when I listened to the Speaker of Parliament speak to LGBTQI plus whatever, he was very passionate. He made his position clear. Sometimes when people watch proceedings on the floor of Parliament and him knowing very well the state of the country today, he creates the impression that he's there for the interest of the state. But there are people who feel uncomfortable with how he moderates and creates the impression that he's buying time. Should the Speaker also be considering what is of national interest and sometimes speak as he did for how he responded to Kamala Harris and Nana Akufo-Addo on what we know he will never support?
Well, I think that the Speaker has been quite forthright on this particular issue. Ghanaians will now see Mr. Akufo-Addo the way he is. He has been very inconsistent. At Al Jazeera, he supported that thing virtually. Then he comes to Ghana, people query him, and then he finds a time to go to Pentecostal, whatever, to go and make a pronouncement as though he was for the bill or he's looking for LGBTQ, whatever name that they call that. Today you are caught on the carpet, Kamala Harris, and we still go about, gerrymandering on the issue. So today everybody has seen who the president is. And this is the president who says he's building a cathedral, law. Is that what the Lord says?
Okay, Mr. Sante, I understand you perfectly. I've just been prompted. Time for those who will be joining us to express their views to also call. It's about 10 minutes to that time. And before I welcome them, I want you to watch this video. It's about a clash between policemen and military officers. When I watched it, I told myself, thumbs up to the Ghana Police Service for demonstrating that you cannot or you are not a walkover. And in the video, as it will be shown to you on the screen, you will see policemen confronting soldiers. I'm told that these soldiers were escorting a bullion van, and a policeman who was not in uniform was on motorbike, and then they followed him. And then in the next video, which will follow shortly, you'll notice that these 4 or 5 soldiers armed walked into a police barracks, and you see policemen driving them out. Now, the audacity of the military officers to walk into a police barracks to cause confusion is a recipe for confrontation. And I'm not surprised at this unprofessional conduct, because the director of communications or the spokesperson of the Ghana Armed Forces proudly sat on TV and said people are commending them for brutalizing poor citizens or innocent citizens of Ashaiman. But if you watch this video, it tells you about the kind of people we are recruiting into the Ghana Armed Forces and the Ghana Police Service, and whether they are being brainwashed to become fearful and then subject people to humiliation. And this time they have the brevity to walk into a police barracks. I'm expecting to hear what the IGP will do, because he has to show interest in this. Don't forget, shortly, we had a case involving an open confrontation between military officers and policemen, and the military high command, the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Interior had to intervene, and they gave us assurances. But it appears as if the level of impunity is getting out of hand, and very soon we may see a war between the Ghana Police Service and the Ghana Armed Forces. And I can tell you, the police service I know today are not the zombies or the Wawa people we call. They are equally well trained, and they would want, with the motivation of Dampare, feel that nobody, whether you are in uniform or otherwise, whether it is brown or green, come and intimidate them. I personally would want to hear how Parliament will push the leadership of the two institutions to speak to this particular issue. When we come back after this short break, very short, start calling, and I'll engage you on what you think NDC can do differently to win public confidence as far as minorities' operations to bring government to order is concerned.
Esie eni kejani aseda afi etwemu yi XYZ adofo mobeka ye ho ema ye koche enyanka de enne nso yasa babiom Easter kire wodobre no afi we yesa che enyanka de
eno nti sade mo ye ma ya frase no afi nso monya ne saa ema yen yesra mo niema bi te se emo gari anwa ebro samna adokodoko de ene niema wodo eboa ema nipa asetena mu eye de na ye nige
eno eti wobetumi ama yen cash eye sika ana wobetumi asenne momo ede ama ye number yi so 0597215419
kai nation so se wo de ba ya tena ye wo su number 37 Abebrese Street ya ye ne Roman asafo no edi hwani mu a ye beje
kayo semebusem etredum kron eyiyimu dunson ese ne wo hu ohiani mbobo no wo ye edema ewrate Easter chewodo mensumi die nie.
Come back. This is Ideas Exchange. My name is Eric Koku Ahianyo. I was born on Wednesday, so I can proudly mention my middle name. It's time for you to make your calls. When you call, I'll try to engage you if your line is very clear, what your strong opinion is. I don't know if somebody is already on the line. If you are, good evening. Yes, good evening, sir. The line has dropped. Tonight, our topic is minority missed opportunities, and is it too late to redeem the sunken image? And we have some exciting conversation with Jonathan Asante, who is a political science, a political analyst and a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. And of course, along the line, Abraham Kumsin joined us, who spoke on behalf of industry, which is interested in the revenue bills. And he says, if Parliament thinks what they want to do will be of interest to themselves, so be it, but they should remember that the consequences will be grave if many people have to go home. If somebody has joined us, I'm ready to speak to him. Hello, good evening. It appears we are having difficulties with our lines, and I'm also waiting anxiously to hear. The numbers on the screen are 0204 155 888, 0204 155 944. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, this is TVXYZ Ideas Exchange. Where have you called us from, and speak out?
I'm calling from Nungwa.
Right, Nungwa.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Calling from Nungwa. Yeah. My name is Eddie. Yeah, I think these are our MPs. What they are doing is not fair. Because it's like the way they are collecting the bribe is too much.
Evidence yet.
The way they are collecting the bribe is too much. So we have to decide what to do next.
Okay, so what you have to do, in your opinion, I can deduce, is if anybody is found guilty, that person will be kicked out from Parliament come 2025. Let me speak to somebody else on the line. Good evening.
Hi, evening.
Yes, where are you speaking to us from?
Speaking from Kumasi.
Kumasi, how are you there? Bibia Boko there?
Yeah, the Boko.
But your AC, what are you saying?
Okay.
But go ahead.
I'm going to speak to the problem between the police and then the armed forces.
Yes, I would have loved to give you space to speak to it. I introduced it because I wanted to draw the attention of authorities. And so if you can make it snappy and then speak to the subject for today, I'll be most grateful.
There's some short to this thing.
Right.
I'm an ex-soldier. Hello?
Yes, I'm listening, sir.
I'm an ex-soldier, and you see, when incidents like this happen between the police and then the military, we should try to talk in such a way as to reconcile them, but not to inflame a passion.
Sir, I can tell you that I totally disagree with you because soldiers are not above the law. Soldiers cannot create the impression that we are in the 1960s, 1970s, where they overthrew governments and had their way. We are in a democratic dispensation. Now look, they were moving with a bullion van. They left the bullion van and they moved into a police barracks. Do you know what it means for 4 or 5 military men to walk into a military a police barracks? Do you know what it means?
That is not good enough. I was a military policeman.
But so you are telling me that we should not inflame passions. If we don't speak to it, they will continue that nonsense. That is what you must know. And I'm using strong words.
Well, you are saying that they are well trained and they will not. The military is trained for combat. The police is trained for internal security. So if you talk like that, you are inflaming.
I am not inflaming passions. Ghanaians must speak out, and when things are getting out of hand, we will speak to it. But I agree that you have every reason, because you are a military or former military officer, you want to follow the status quo. That status quo will be killed by Ghanaians if military men decide to go wayward. And that is what I'm speaking to say.
What they did was totally wrong.
Good, and that is what makes me happy.
I was a military police, but that's not saying that we should start, to reconcile them and to talk about this person is well trained, this person is. When you do like that, you are rather inflaming.
Okay, thank you very much for making your point. I just hope that they will not corner and beat me. But me, if they beat me, all of them would die, because I come from Nogopo. That's just on the lighter side. Good evening, and thanks for your time, sir.
Good evening, Eric.
I hope you are not a former military officer. But make your point, sir. We are talking about politics, public expectation in Parliament as a whole, and sometimes the disappointments and how people react.
Yes, Eric, to be frank with you, NDC, they really disappointed us. They really disappointed us, because we need to call a spade. So the previous leaders of minority side in Parliament, they really give service to our debt, because they want to show that they are powerful than the party. Therefore, the party needs to take a second look at them for tomorrow consideration. Some of them, they want to become a president. Some of them are having big ambition. So these are selfish people. When they were appointed, what happened to the previous people? The people that their predecessors, what happened to them? So I think that these people, we are monitoring, watching them one after the other. We will sit down and wait that they will come back to us, that we should give them a chance so that they also lead this country. And who they are going to lead, we will all see.
Okay.
We are highly disappointed in it, especially Haruna.
Because for now we are not pretty sure of who the actors are, because the party has not made it public. I would respectfully beg that let us not use this platform to mention people in specific and then call them out. And I appreciate the concern you have raised anyway. Okay, so I'll pick one last call and I'll conclude with something that is very loaded but very instructive. Thanks for your time, sir. Good evening.
Hello? Yeah, good evening.
Yes, where are you now? And let us know and then make your point briefly.
Assalamu to the world.
Okay.
I have a question for you. Please, if a father providing for his family says he won't eat a meal that has been prepared in the evening, does that mean the whole family won't eat?
No, the family must eat.
Very good. So if the NDC decide that, okay, we are not in support of someone coming into the ministerial position, does that mean that all of them must adhere to that? No.
Not necessarily.
About the economy of the nation. If we don't have an agri minister, how do you want the agri sector to improve? No. So what if the finance minister says, okay, I've resigned? Does it mean we don't have to do what? We into that person?
It's a strong point, because I believe in the argument that positions like agri minister, trade minister were cabinet positions, and therefore specifically they may have. But the point they wanted to make was that the size of government is too large, and government could have comfortably used the same numbers which were cut short by those who resigned to fill the gap. So the core issue is not about filling the position. It is about the numbers that will add on to the public purse.
This is something. Cutting down the size of the government has nothing to do with this ministers and stuff. They should cut down the cost of maintaining those people. That's one fact. You know the amount of money government spends on parliament system. This is the whole cost.
It's just unfortunate that this exciting angle that you are raising, which would have made the two of us do some bantering, is coming at the tail end. It's 9 o'clock. I'm being chased out. But I believe that next week, when we come again and the topic is exciting, I would expect that you call, and I love debates, so that we do it together and hear the verdict from our audience. Thanks so much for joining us. But I want to leave with this. These are excerpts from a man calling himself Bagbin Impondan Jr. at the NDC constituency youth organizer for Kintampo South. And it reads, and I'm reading excerpts that are culled from what he put out. We do not understand the power play in Parliament on the side of the deliberate attempt by some members of the caucus to make sure that Dr. Atuforsen and his group fail, but we must know that if this current leadership of the NDC caucus in Parliament fail, it is the whole NDC that has failed, and not Atuforsen, Chairman General Fifi Fiavikote or John Mahama. It goes ahead. Did our NDC MPs for once think about the victims of Ayaoso, West Wuogon, and Techiman South in the 2020 elections before approving Brian Achampon? If we need power, then we must work on things that will bring us power. Ghanaians will never forgive us if we don't deliver them in 2024. And I put this picture together. It's a sheep in wolf's skin. And I'm saying the MPs struggling to redeem themselves, I advise that they must be mindful of the commentary they put on social media, because people are digging into their comments and they are drawing their own conclusions that perhaps Edurachiomu. That's how I want to end tonight's program, Ideas Exchange. I'll meet you again next week. Tomorrow, between 1 and 2 o'clock, there will be a repeat of this program.